Alrighty, let's do this. Hello, and welcome to Imagi, or as some prefer to call it, Imagi. Imagi is a web application built with all the latest web and back-end technologies. There's a free 3-week trial, and then a monthly subscription kicks in for $18 a month, which we believe is a very reasonable amount for a reality modifying engine. You can cancel at any time, no questions asked. You find it by clicking here under the main navigation. It's an Aladdin's lamp with an unlimited number of wishes. I mean, that's a good way to look at it. In more practical terms, you could call it an engine of manifestation, a way to hack into the machine level code of your own reality, or maybe even somebody else's. It's based on the very simple principle that you are the source of all you perceive. Using symbols, color, artistically appealing design, it reaches into the domains of higher minds, where causality for 3D reality reigns, as an example. There you're able to overwrite the code specific to you. When you sit down to use Imagi, one or more beings shows up to carry out your wishes, and the likeliest first to show up will be a more primary you, much larger you, what some might call your own higher self. So Imagi's action is calling upon nothing other than your own larger being. It will do anything you ask or tell it to do, so long as it doesn't interfere with your own growth or processes, or anybody else's growth or processes. Same goes for things, places, natural features like mountains or oceans, rivers or parks. But clearing and balancing work for almost all places will almost always be appropriate. It's important to know that higher level beings will not only help you with what you think you need, but they'll also initiate what you most need, even if you're not aware of whatever that might be. They'll also use these opportunities to flow into the world what the world needs. And so the use of Imagi is as much about the use of higher beings as it is about your use. Now let's look at the functions. This is the construct. This is where you'll load everything, backgrounds, glyphs, images, with which you can make designs or not. I'll be getting into a lot more of that in subsequent videos. This first button is for media prep. And what that means is, let's say that you want to program water or a crystal or a talisman, anything you want to program. This is what you would use. And what it does is both clear and structure, as an example, water. It'll instantly clear any crystal and have it ready for programming, as an example. By pressing it, this is what you'll see. If you put your attention on whatever it is for just a moment, let's say a crystal or a glass of water, it's going to do the preparation work for those. In the case of water, it's going to, in fact, structure that water, and that is visually provable if, for instance, you freeze the water. This button is for manually selecting backgrounds to load into the construct. So if you select it, you'll see that there's a bunch of backgrounds. A lot of beauties there, including at the bottom a black and a white, in case you want to just build something before you even load a background, which I will sometimes do, as a matter of fact. Let's just go ahead and select one. This button is for selecting glyphs. By clicking it, you open a gallery of glyph artwork, if you will, to load into the construct to work with. As you can see, this first set, they each have meanings. This set we call source code, and they're very basic, very fundamental symbols in the level of the causal, as it were. it's also worth mentioning that they are more than just these basic meanings, but are vast libraries of information that can be used for many things. Almost none of which do we really even know. This set, they're way out there symbols. They're literally on a galactic and beyond level, and they don't have any meanings associated simply because we don't have the language to describe what those meanings are. So you can see these are the sun signs, signs of the zodiac. Not only do they carry within them the properties that are associated with those sun signs, but they also carry a lot of information that is beyond the zodiacal context. Here we've got the platonic solids, which themselves emit tones, as you might be aware, and they also can function in as, let's say, surrogates of the elements. These are, in fact, the signs, and the elements are also described by these. Obviously, we have the 5-pointed and the 6-pointed star, Metatron's cube, some geometric symbols for design, some balls and things. You'll see in a lot of the designs that it comes in very handy. Clearly we have the Celtic knots, or at least 3 of them. And we come down to another set of symbols. These are loosely known as the moon symbols, and they have associated meanings, but there, once again, are far more meanings associated with them and information that is contained within them. And then at the bottom we have the planetary symbols that have always been used in alchemical and magical processes, as an example, and which also contain much information. Now, if one of these appears in your construct, it's probably going to refer to whatever properties that planet is in charge of, as an example. Clicking any of these once loads them into the construct. Once loaded into the construct, you can move them around. You can resize them, flip them, horizontally or vertically. You can also right-click them, bring them to front, or send them backwards, as an example. You can also duplicate and remove them. This is also true for the other things that you can load into the construct. This button is for selecting what we call linkages. These can represent DNA, as an example, and literally rewrite DNA, even recode the limbic system, as an example. They can also be used for connecting ideas or for connecting functions that you're creating with the glyphs. So I'll give an example of what I mean, and this will just be pretty random, but I'll select a couple here that we'll work with. This symbol happens to be one that's for forward thinking, and I think what I'll do to give this a little bit more concrete meaning is select another glyph, another 2 glyphs, so that I can really give an idea of what I'm talking about. So let's say that you want to select inner strength and release. In doing that, you could connect it this way. You'd in effect be saying something like, with this configuration, by connecting this configuration of symbols to, I want to bring into my life greater forward thinking through the release of whatever is blocking me from my inner strength, and to express it all in inner strength. You're in effect creating your own language. And this is just a really quick and dirty example, so don't hold me to this. I'll be giving better examples here in a minute on how this is done. This button is for resetting the application, and it does exactly what it describes. It just resets it. And that is something that you might wind up using if, for an example, you want to run consecutive sessions for whatever reason. It's also worth noting that you can have as many of these of the app windows open as you like, and that could be, for instance, if you want to run multiple intents all at the same time. And but know this: it is powerful, and it's always best to be circumspect about that, and to move with to move smartly, not overload your system, stuff like that. This button is for saving the image that you build. It's going to save it in a PNG format, and it's just saving it to your hard drive. You can browse to the folder that you want to put it in, and you can name it whatever you like. And if it's, for instance, a bona fide session, and not that you have just built something beautiful, which of course you're welcome to do anytime you like, because they also do work, but you can open it in a photo viewer and it's still going to have the same effect. It's worthy of note that as of right now, which might not be true just a couple of months down the road, we're going to have the ability to reload a given saved image, including the layers, so that you can continue working on it and just run it again from the construct. This is the alpha glyph legend, meaning that these are what we call alpha glyphs, and they are associated with the English alphabet. These are also vast containers of information each, and aren't limited to our alphabet, as an example. Later on, maybe even as you are seeing this video, we will have made this particular function clickable so that you can select these visually to load into the construct. Now, to type your intent, you put the cursor here, type your intent. Let's just say kidney cleanse. By hitting enter, it'll also load the alpha glyphs, as we mentioned, into the construct, which can also be moved around, resized, and so on. Using these does in fact add a language component to it, which can in fact make a session be more effective, but those are some nuances that we'll get into here in a little bit. It's important to mention that you probably don't want to type full paragraphs for an intent. Keep them short and simple, clear. You want to be very clear about what you're asking for here. And the next step would be to adjust the opacity with this one, and that's just adjusting the opacity of the background, which can either set off your symbols, your own designs, or can enhance the background. The next step is to set the timer. You do that by clicking the clock. You can either drag it with the slider, and it's very sensitive, so it's not easy to fine-tune. If you want to fine-tune the duration to run your session, then just go ahead and use the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard. And then enter or clicking OK will have it ready. Then whatever you're doing, simply put your mind on it for a minute, unless you've typed a an intent, then you don't even have to put your mind on it. Let's say it's a glass of water, though. You just put your attention on it for just long enough to click energize, and the program will begin its processes. Just to eliminate any confusion ahead of time, when you click here, this is expressed in seconds only. Once it's selected, it's going to express it in minutes and seconds. Now we'll reset it so we can explain the functions of this side of buttons. This one auto loads a background, and we'll get into why you might want to do auto loading. This one auto loads glyphs. If you click it again, it'll just go randomly pick another background. And it's, if for instance you know what you're doing with this session, it won't be random. This one automatically selects glyphs, and it loads 7 of them. This one automatically selects linkages and loads 7 of those. Anything selected, anything put into the construct can be removed. Let's say that you have built a whole session and you forgot to prep water or something. And I'll point out again, you don't need to prep anything. This will just work in the very air or reality around you or in your body without a medium. Having a medium, however, can enhance the effects. But let's say that you were planning to do that and you forgot to prep the water. All you have to do is come up here, open a new one, and prep the water. Then you can go ahead and run your session. We'll wrap this one up by saying that the following videos are about the crazy variety of ways that it can be used and the purposes of those uses. So just go on to the next video.